Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today you're joining me in a Jaguar F-Type, which of course have been around for quite some time. I know that I'm late to the party with a review of one of these, but this one's just come into my stock range and I've fallen in love with it. It is fantastic. More specifically, it is an R-Dynamic all-wheel drive. It's the 3-litre V6 Supercharged engine, which produces 375 brake horsepower, and that is phenomenal. And I'm very grateful on a day like today where, you know, we're mid-November now and the roads are wet and greasy, so I'm very grateful to have that all-wheel drive system. Just gives you a little bit more confidence when driving it. But this come in part exchange against a Mercedes-Benz GLC 43 AMG. The simple reason for the change was that he needed more seats. He's got a family and a dog, and just said, you know, I can't ever have the opportunity to drive the F-Type being a two-seater sports coupe. So decided to get something that was still quite a fun and interesting car, being the AMG line GLC 43. Still gives you a good amount of performance, but had to give up what is, in my opinion, one of my favourite F-Types I've ever sat in. I've sat in a few, I've driven a few, but I think the colour combination of British racing green and black leather is definitely the top of the pile for me. It's got a great specification as well, including this flat bottom steering wheel, these performance style seats which are really quite cool. They're heated too, and the steering wheel's heated, which is lovely. I've got that on today, given that it is a little bit brisk. It's also electric memory functions. I've also got power fold mirrors with blind spot assist. I've got dual climate control. The R-Dynamic gives you the adaptable sports exhaust. So if I press this button here, opens up the exhaust, and that just is the best soundtrack that I've heard out of a V6 ever. I think the only car that sounds better than this, and it really is only ever so slightly, is the V8 version of the F-Type, because that is truly a wonderful sound to have. Got the glass panoramic roof, which is also a nice feature to have, especially in a two-seater sports coupe, I've found, because you sit quite far back in the car. You've got quite a long dash in front of you, and obviously you're on the later half. You can actually enjoy the benefit of it. I tend to notice in some SUVs, when you've got a panoramic roof, you don't actually get to enjoy it as the driver. It's nice because it lets a load of light into the car and everything, but you don't necessarily see it because it kind of sits above you. So this, you can enjoy it. It's really quite nice. Also got the front and rear parking sensors. Front sensors are an additional extra, and it also has the rear camera as well. So it is fully loaded with specification. It's only done 54,000 miles, which again is a big bonus point. It's on a 67 plate, and the service history is fantastic. There are a couple of points to kind of be wary of the 3-litre V6 Supercharged. This one's already had one of the major ones done, which is the supercharger pump. So it's not necessarily the cheapest job to have done. I've got an invoice in the folder. It's about 2,900 quid to have that done. So if you are looking to find one, it could be worth either factoring in that it might need to be done, or if you can get one that's already had that piece replaced, then you're in for a winner. I delivered the GLC 43 to the chap and then drove this back, and it was a good 2-hour drive, and I have to say I was really pleasantly surprised with how it drove. The only thing I will say is the suspension is quite stiff, and if you're familiar with the channel, I live in the countryside and the country roads definitely aren't the best, and you do tend to feel every bump. But when it comes to a nice road and you want to put your foot down, you've definitely got every bit of confidence that the car can handle it. But yeah, 375 brake in a car of this size is just phenomenal. I think it's a really good level of power. And what I mean by that is that you can have real good fun and you can push the car to a bit of its limit without being absolutely terrified that you're going to bin it on every corner. It seems to be a good kind of compromise of performance and also safety. The 5-litre V8, I imagine, is just an absolute monster, but you might be a little bit hesitant to put your foot down in the instance that you might be going sideways somewhere relatively quick. So yeah, I mean, it's just you know, fantastic. It's really quite economical as well, considering what it is. I was averaging about 32 miles to the gallon coming back. I mean, it was a nice steady journey. Sat at 70 miles an hour with the cruise control on, but that's still pretty good. And it makes me think that you could probably run this car as an everyday car the boot is quite a substantial size that you can get, you know, luggage and things in it for a weekend away, or even a week away. Really, it's a good size boot. I like the fact that they haven't done what other sports coupes and things try and do, is to give it rear seats which aren't actually rear seats. They've said no, what's the point, you're never going to use them, which then means obviously you do get a bigger boot. So I prefer it to be that way, because anyone who has a 4-seater sports car never really use the rear seats, and the people that are in the rear seats are never very comfortable in those rear seats. So I'm quite pleased that they just didn't even have them in the first place. So yeah, I mean, I've not been driving it myself. I wish I could. I've got the 2 dogs, so it's quite important that obviously I have a car that suits them. I can't have 2 dogs in here, obviously, but I would absolutely love to have this car as an everyday car. But yeah, it's ever so fun to drive, and obviously the specification, it's what I would choose if I was to go into a Jaguar dealership and buy a Jaguar F-Type. It's the colour that I would choose, it's the interior that I would choose. There are obviously additional extras that this one doesn't have, which could have been chosen, like 360 cameras or heads-up display and things like that, but you won't necessarily be miffed if it doesn't have them, because the soundtrack, definitely, just makes up for every little flaw that this thing has, and it doesn't really have any. So yeah, I'm very biased because I really like it, but and it's in my stock range, obviously. But just what a fantastic car, and I was quite looking forward to doing a video with it, just as an excuse to drive it. It's just, it's got these big 20-inch upgraded diamond finished alloy wheels, which are really nice. They really set the car off well. It's got like a black external pack, so the badges and everything are all in black. The side vents and the bonnet vents are all in black, and I think that looks really, really smart. It's quite a long car. You don't really realise when it comes to tight spaces just how in front it is, and it's really useful to have those front parking sensors. Even the dash, I'm sure you can see it on the camera, the dash seems really quite long. I quite like the vents that come up from here as well. They're not at the moment, but when they pop up, I think they look really smart. I like the fact that it's physical dials. They're nice big chunky dials for your climate control, and then you press it and you have your seat controls on there as well. Again, physical switches for your aircon and your auto and your recirculation. It's got a heated front screen, which is definitely coming in handy coming into this time of year with the winter. So yeah, I like that. The switch gear down here is lovely. I like the gear shift lever. That's a really nice feature to have. A little switch down here to put it into dynamic mode, which again becomes more reactive, more responsive. Just fantastic to drive. You can't not do that. And then you've got a rain, ice and snow mode at the top as well, which fortunately I don't need today, albeit the roads are a little greasy. I've got a spoiler, so I can press a button there and the spoiler comes up and you can actually see it in your rear window. I did a review of a Porsche 718 that we've had in, of which that does also have a spoiler button, but you can't see it from when you're in the car. And I know it's a gimmick, and I know it's a, you know, why would you want to see your spoiler, but it's just something I enjoy to see. And then obviously it does activate over a certain speed as well. I think it's 80 miles an hour when the spoiler does come up. But the build quality seems really quite good. You know, I know it's only done 54,000 miles and it is on a 67 reg, but none of the buttons are faded or anything like that. There's no switches that are broken. You know, I can't see that anything's been replaced. I quite like this like carbon finish on the center trim as well with the gloss black. I think that sets it off really nicely. And these seats are really, really quite comfortable, albeit obviously they are the performance seats. You'd expect them to be a little bit sharper, but I'd quite happily sit here all day, kind of, you know, cruising along. So yeah, really like the seats on here as well. I'm trying to think of something bad to say. The Meridian sound system's brilliant, and again, that's an additional upgrade. Bluetooth is great to have. This was just before Jaguar did the facelift in 2018 on the media systems, where it had like wired Apple CarPlay and stuff like that. So maybe that is a downside to this particular one, is it doesn't have the Apple CarPlay. albeit that you can get those fitted on an aftermarket system these days, and they're pretty damn good. I've got a Range Rover L405 in my stock range. It's a 2014 car, and that's got something called ID Core, which sits behind the screen and gives you wireless Apple CarPlay / Android Auto. So I'd probably look at doing that, but even then, it's a gimmick. I've still got Bluetooth, I've still got satellite navigation, and I can still answer the phone, which is the only thing I ever do in my truck on the Apple CarPlay side of things anyway. So yeah, I think you've got to be pretty conscious with the specification of the F-Type, because you can get some that really don't have an enormous amount of extras. They all come with this fantastic 3-litre V6 or the 5-litre V8. There are 2 litres out there. I wouldn't necessarily rate those. I think if you're going to have a sports performance car, you realistically want a bit of performance to go with it. The 2 litre just seems a little bit lazy, but you know, I've only driven one of those and I didn't drive it for very long, so I might be swayed if I was to drive it again. But this 3 litre, I think, is just a real happy medium of relatively good economy given what you're driving, along with a phenomenal soundtrack and fantastic performance at 375 brake horsepower. So yeah, I've genuinely just been really impressed with it. And as I say, this particular example, I knew it was a good one when the chap who part exchanged it in with me, or we did the deal with, he's looked after it in the sense of, you know, he's done the bits that needed to be done as and when. It's got really good tyres all around, Pirellis on the front and Goodyears on the back. They're all of really decent tread. The brakes are all in really great condition, and you can tell it's just been well looked after. So yeah, I really have enjoyed driving this as and when I've been able to, and I'm really sorry I haven't been able to find anything necessarily bad to say about it, which isn't really, you know, I just love it. I think it's a great car. I think maybe the only thing I would go for is maybe a little bit of an updated screen, but it wouldn't necessarily put me off, because then of course if you go in newer, you're going to have to pay more money for it. So yeah, I mean, they've become, in relative terms, good value. This one here is up at 31,995 with 54,000 miles on it, and as I say, an absolutely fantastic service history. It's been serviced 9 times, either with Jaguar or with the specialist that he had nearby him. So it goes on to that updated online system, and both original keys and everything like that. Sounds like such a sales pitch from a salesman, but there's just nothing to not like about this car. It's fantastic. So yeah, that is my very, very biased review of a car that I have in stock, but it's just fantastic. There's no other word for it. I love it. The sound is just fantastic. As I say, it's a bit stiff on the roads that I drive it on, but you kind of have to compromise somewhere if you're going to drive a sports car. So I don't mind it too much, given that, you know, it is what it is, and it's got the lower profile tyres because of the bigger wheels, and just, it's great. All the switch gears, physical buttons, which I really like. It's still touchscreen on the centre here. It has everything that I would necessarily choose on the car, as mentioned. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my video, which is just singing the praises of a Jaguar F-Type. Please do continue to like and subscribe to the channel. It really does mean a lot. The numbers are growing, and I'm really enjoying these type of cars. So if you want to see more of them, then please do subscribe, and I hope to see you for the next one. Thank you very much.